sandwiches, ice cream, coffee and snacks, and many other pleasing treats. Our foods are fresh and tasty, our drinks satisfying and refreshing. They're so good.
Welcome to Average Joe's Drive-In.
And now, on with the show.
Happy New Year, everybody, and welcome to episode number 99 of Average Joe's Drive-In. I am your host, TJ Washburn, and we are kicking off this year with a Reviewcast. So, I tried to finagle it out so episode 100 would be the first episode of this year, but it just didn't quite work out like that because I had to skip a few episodes and all that good stuff, and life happens. But so we're gonna kick it anyway. Like I said, we're kicking it off with a Reviewcast, and this Reviewcast is gonna be action movie heavy because that's just kind of the mood I've been in lately, and I've been watching a lot of action movies. So it's been kind of a weird, weird back and forth between the films. I go through spurts, like I know a lot of viewers do, where I want comedy, or I want horror, I want action. Where I go so hard in October with horror, I usually kind of lean towards a different genre for, a month or two, and that's no exception this year. Although I will say I have watched more horror in the last couple months than I usually do right after the October Horror-thon. So you're going to get some more horror reviews here pretty soon because I watched a bunch. I just got off vacation from my day job, and I did watch a lot of movies. It's kind of, like I said, a weird cross-section of stuff. But I'm gabbing, and you guys don't want to hear it. So anyway, let's kick it off with a track that I did a commentary for with the Movie Freaks, and you can find that on their site right now. They just released it last Saturday. So, and that is 1990's Hard to Kill.
Steven Seagal is Mason Storm, a cop working undercover until his cover was blown.
Whoever that is, I don't want him to get an hour older.
They thought they'd seen the last of him. But Mason Storm is hard to kill.
Mason!
Now,
He's toast, you understand?
the climate is right
We'll get him, buddy.
for revenge.
Every one of them. Think you better dial 911.
Mason Storm is about to hit back.
That wasn't the time. Now's the time.
We are going to put an end to violence, and you can take that to the bank.
Steven Seagal is hard to kill.
Take that to the bank.
This is an action crime drama directed by Bruce Malmuth, has a 96-minute runtime, rated R, stars Steven Seagal, Kelly LeBrock, and William Sadler. I watched this one on DVD. Left for dead with his wife killed in their house, LA detective Mason Storm will have to make a quick recovery, expose those behind the murder, and take revenge. I saw this once before, early 90s, shortly after it came out. I remembered zero about it. Truthfully, most Seagal flicks are like that for me. Out of all the ones I have seen, I couldn't even tell you what happened in any of them other than Erica Laniak jumping out of the cake in Under Siege. And that wasn't because of Steven Seagal. I appreciate them for the dumb, fun action flicks they are, but I've never found much substance in them. I happened to watch this for a commentary episode of the Movie Freaks podcast, as I said. Just if whatever you're listening to this podcast on, you can find the Movie Freaks, download it so you can watch the movie along with our commentary and play the Kelly LeBrock hairstyle drinking game. That was an experience in itself because of that. This movie feels like your typical 80s, early 90s action film. The style, over-the-top action sequences, and trope-filled story all there. Cheesy dialogue? Check. Random dudes being thrown through glass? Check. Random love interest? Check. Plot devices that make no sense? Check. Watch it with friends made it a lot easier to pick up on the continuity errors and other little odd things. Despite all of that, it managed to be entertaining as hell. Maybe not for the right reasons, but I enjoyed myself. Listen, this isn't a good movie, but the entertainment value is high. It's not something I'm going to go out of my way to watch again anytime soon, but it has piqued my interest in throwing on a few other early 90s Seagal flicks and seeing if they follow a similar suit. It will be just like watching them again for the first time. I have several of them on VHS, so one of these days I think I just may need to have a mini Seagal marathon. One I wouldn't recommend to anyone who's not a fan of that era of bad, good action films. If you're down with that, it's worth a watch. My rating is a 5 out of 10. The average IMDb rating is a 5.6 out of 10. Up next, from 1983, I believe, I forgot to write the year down, Lone Wolf McQuade.
When you're the best, you do things with style. J.J. McQuade is the best. He's a lone wolf lawman in the Lone Star State.
Your record is unrivaled. But my kind of ranger is a model citizen, pillar in the community, goes to church, he lives clean, he's got a loving wife and kids. Your lone wolf attitude is gonna change.
Even a wolf has his weaknesses. And a powerful enemy. But even the best can't always do it alone.
Running up the dump!
Something to remember you by.
Ranger, meet your new partner.
It's gonna be an honor working with you, Ranger McQuade.
I think you know Agent Jackson.
Looks like somebody doesn't like you, McQuade.
I'll make a few enemies here and there.
Yeah? So do I.
So now the wolf has a wolf pack. The final showdown belongs to McQuade. Lone Wolf McQuade, starring Chuck Norris, David Carradine, Barbara Carrera, and Leon Isaac Kennedy.
This is an action crime drama directed by Steve Carver. It's a 107-minute runtime, rated PG, stars Chuck Norris, David Carradine, and Barbara Carrera. I watched this on Blu-ray. Texas Ranger J.J. McQuade likes to work by himself until a Latino state trooper, K.O. Ramos, needs his help to find out who has hijacked a U.S. Army convoy and hurt Ramos' daughter. With the help of FBI agent, the team tracks down drug trafficker and arms dealer Raleigh Wilkes. After Wilkes kills the federal agent, McQuade battles the criminal using all of his skills and training, including guns and martial arts. And whoever wrote that synopsis, that was my fault for not looking it over. It's not Ramos's daughter, it's McQuade's daughter, and they kidnap her. Spoiler alert. The 80s were a time of overdone to the extreme action films. There were a handful of action stars that exemplified that era. Schwarzenegger, Stallone, and Norris were three of the biggest. Out of those three, Norris was the one who always felt the most grounded. While Missing in Action and Invasion USA were full of everything you would expect out of an 80s action film, Lone Wolf McQuade was always my favorite of his films. I was excited when I finally got a Blu-ray release. Since I picked it up, I've watched it a handful of times, but I hadn't seen it in a while and was ready for another viewing. So being on an action kick, it was definitely time. I'll be the first to admit there isn't anything that's really stands out about this film or is particularly good. What sets it apart is the feel of the whole film. Everything from the score to the fight sequences and the fact it is almost a modern-day Western. There's an air cheesiness to it, but that's what makes it work in the grand scheme of things. It's your typical good guy versus bad guy scenario. There are all the right tropes and plot devices to get the character from point A to point C. There's the epic final showdown between the protagonist and antagonist. It all rolls together to form a highly enjoyable and watchable film. Part of what this one makes this one stick out for me is the fact it was one of those films I watched over and over as a kid. I had a tape copy that had snagged off HBO and watched over and over until the tape broke. This, First Blood Part 2, and Red Dawn were my action film go-to movies. At one point, I could almost recite them word for word verbatim. It always makes me happy when those films still hold up and keep some of the charm that made me find them so endearing as a youngster. This will continue to be one of my favorite 80s action films, even if it doesn't stand out amongst the sea of awesome over-the-top greats from that era. If you're a fan of Norris or that decade of action films and have never seen this one, I highly recommend giving it a shot. My rating is a 6 out of 10. The average IMDb rating is a 6.4 out of 10. Up next, from 1979, Mad Max.
Somewhere on the abandoned highways of tomorrow, where law is another word for vengeance.
I'm gonna blow him away. It's dead in his butt.
Where justice is a forgotten memory.
We're 100% snafu.
And order lies shattered in the ruins of civilization. Somewhere up ahead, a hero is waiting. Max. The crack interceptor for the main force patrol.
I am the Night Rider! I am the Night Rider! Stop!
His power is a badge of bronze.
The Night Rider. Remember him when you look at the night sky.
We know who you are, Bronze.
We remember the Night Rider!
The friend, where does it have to get you?
Get out of here.
His only weapon, 600 horses of fuel-injected machinery. His mission is a non-stop high-torque pursuit of speed-crazed bandits.
The Bronze, kill our pride.
I'm scared, Thief. I'm beginning to enjoy it.
You're on the top shelf. You're a winner, Max.
Crazy about you.
We know who you are!
They've broken his wife. They've killed his best friend.
People don't believe in heroes anymore.
They've pushed him too far.
We're gonna give them back their heroes.
Mad Max. The last law in a world gone out of control. Where every day is a duel. Every life is on the line.
And every turn in the road brings you face to face with a new kind of terror. Mad Max. Pray that he's out there. Somewhere.
This is an action-adventure sci-fi directed by George Miller, has an 88-minute runtime, rated R, stars Mel Gibson, Joanne Samuel, and Hugh Case Byrne. I watched this on Amazon Prime. In a not-too-distant dystopian future, when man's most precious resources, oil, has been depleted and the world plunged into war, famine, and financial chaos, the last vestiges of the law in Australia attempt to restrain a vicious biker gang. Max, an officer with the Main Force Patrol, launches a personal vendetta against the gang when his wife and son are hunted down and murdered, leaving him with nothing but the instincts for survival and retribution. While I have recently watched The Road Warrior and Beyond Thunderdome, I haven't seen the original Mad Max in a long time. Being a bit under the weather, I was skimming through Prime trying to see what had been recently added when it popped up. I figured it was as good a time as any to throw it on. Mad Max feels and looks like a late 70s drive-in style film. It very much has that grindhouse quality to it, without going to the extreme levels of that subgenre. The film itself is just bonkers, and honestly, I've never quite felt like I knew what was going on throughout the entire film. I think both The Road Warrior and Beyond Thunderdome are much more competent films story-wise. Out of those three films, this one feels the least organized, but that's also part of the charm. You just kind of roll with it and take it for what it is. When the final credits roll, I still find myself asking more questions than I was given answers as to what actually happened. In many cases, when that happens, it kills my enjoyment of a film. Occasionally, that's what makes it work. This is one of those rare cases where, again, it's part of the charm. Even with it being enjoyable, it amazes me this film spawned the number of sequels it has. I'm glad that happened because it's a franchise I rather enjoy. And one of those rare cases where I think the sequels, like the sequels better than the original. My rating is a 6 out of 10. The average IMDb rating is a 7 out of 10. Up next, from 2016, The Great Wall.
We have traveled thousands of miles in search of a weapon more powerful than we've ever known.
Why are you here?
We came to trade.
You lie. You are thieves.
What was that?
There are many things you have not seen.
The Great Wall is the only barrier keeping the world safe. Mother of God.
What is it they want?
To feed.
Trained all their lives for this war.
Let me fight with you.
This is where you chose to die. Good luck with that.
Stay and fight.
They see you as some kind of hero.
I fought for greed and gods. This is the first war I've seen. Worth fighting.
This is an action-adventure fantasy directed by Yumo Zhang, has a 103-minute runtime, rated PG-13, stars Matt Damon, Tian Jing, and Willem Dafoe. I watched this on Blu-ray. When a mercenary warrior is imprisoned within the Great Wall, he discovers the mystery behind one of the greatest wonders of the world, as wave after wave of marauding beasts besiege the massive structure. When his quest for fortune turns into a journey towards heroism, he joins a huge army of elite warriors to confront the unimaginable in seemingly unstoppable force. This is one of those summer blockbuster type films that I skipped out on. Frankly, I was pretty sure it was going to suck, and for the most part, I didn't hear anything good about it when it came out, so I passed. Well, I had a 50-cent rental voucher through Redbox and couldn't find much I was in the mood for, so I said the hell with it and snagged it. While this isn't a great movie, I don't see why all the hate. It's a dumb, big effects-driven action fantasy. I was entertained, the effects looked solid, there were plenty of very cool fight scenes, and I really was never bored. I've said again and again, people seem to have lost their ability to enjoy stupid fun. I'm glad I gave this one a chance. I think if you're in the mood for an action-packed, effects-driven film that you don't have to think too much, think like Transformers, okay? Not great, but entertaining somewhat. This is the film to check out. Honestly, if I come across this one for a good price on DVD or Blu-ray, I'd definitely add it to the collection. My rating is a 6 out of 10. The average IMDb rating is a 6 out of 10. Up next, another classic from my childhood, and that is 1985's The Last Dragon.
A martial arts champion in search of the glow.
Master, I need more time.
I am no longer your master.
A rock and roll star on the rise.
I know what it's like to lose precious things.
A madman.
Shogun of Harlem.
A maniac.
You're gonna put my video on your show, aren't you?
The answer is no.
And the glamour, the power, and the sound of Motown.
I don't want you to kill anybody.
Are you out of your mind? The Leroy Green I'm looking for is a little punk who thinks he's a kung fu master.
I am no master.
You sure look like a master to me.
This is Barry Gordy's The Last Dragon.
To the beat of the rhythm of the night, dance until the morning light. Forget about the worries on your mind. You can leave it all behind.
It's about the power of the glow. Timok, Vanity. Barry Gordy's The Last Dragon, directed by Michael Schultz, a Motown Productions picture from TriStar.
This is an action comedy drama directed by Michael Schultz, has a 108-minute runtime, PG-13, stars Timok, Vanity, and Christopher Murney. I watched this one on Netflix. Leroy Green, a young martial artist living in New York City, trains tirelessly to attain the same level of mastery as the great Bruce Lee. One night, his life changes forever when he rescues television personality Laura Charles from evil businessman Eddie Arcadian. Impressed by Leroy's bravery, Laura falls for Leroy, but to keep her safe, he will have to defeat a gang leader named Shonuff, the self-styled Shogun of Harlem. This was a staple film of my childhood. I don't know how many times I watched it as a kid and thought how badass it was. I think HBO might have never removed this one for what seems like a 2-year stretch because it was always on. I was okay with that. While I must have seen it a few times in the last 25 years or so, it's been quite some time since my last viewing, at least a couple of years. I thought this was the right time to throw it on and give it a revisit. Okay, this movie still kicks ass in a fun sort of way, but there's no denying it very much feels like a mid-80s film. A lot of it's cheesy, but it's in that right wheelhouse sort of area where it doesn't hurt the film at all. In fact, much like I said with, Mad Max, I think this is what makes it work. One thing that I noticed this time that I don't think I ever picked up on before was how much of this film feels like an 80s music video. For those of you who grew up in the early days of MTV, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. On the technical side of things, it's solid. There's nothing groundbreaking, but nothing that's a detriment to the overall viewing experience. Another thing I picked up on that I didn't remember, we get to see a very young William H. Macy in a very small role. That caught me off guard. I couldn't believe I hadn't noticed that before as many times as I've watched this film. I'm not so sure how this would hold up with a newer generation of viewers, but it's still solid for those of us who grew up with it. If you haven't seen it in a long time, I recommend giving it a revisit. I'm hard-pressed to believe you won't still enjoy it. My rating is a 6 out of 10. The average IMDb rating is a 6.9 out of 10. While normally I would crack open the VHS vault for a bunch of VHS movies, and I haven't actually done that for a while. But that's not because I haven't been watching them. I've kind of been saving them. This next one, I've only got one film that I'm going to talk about from the VHS era, and that is 1999's Universal Soldier: The Return.
These are the soldiers of the new millennium. Almost perfect. Almost human. Almost.
They're not responding to our commands!
Under our control. Now, one will lead them to destroy mankind.
The time of man has ended.
And one will return.
Luke Devereaux's the original Universal Soldier.
To stop him.
No. Been there, done that. The only way is to blow them up and hold the pieces. Don't keep fighting us.
This summer, it's man against machine.
Capture Luke Devereaux. Minimal damage.
One soldier against the ultimate warrior.
Dangerous.
The winner controls the future. Universal Soldier: The Return.
This is not your lucky day.
This is an action sci-fi directed by Mick Rogers, has an 83-minute runtime, rated R, stars Jean-Claude Van Damme, Bill Goldberg, and Heidi Sands. I watched this again, as I said, on VHS. After being brought back from the dead as a genetically enhanced warrior, Luke Devereaux is now fully human and working with scientist Dylan Cotner to create a new, safer breed of fighters. When Cotner's project loses its funding, his supercomputer, the sentient Seth, is scheduled to be turned off. Alarmed, Seth takes over a human body to defend itself. To prevent the machine from destroying mankind, Luke must fight back. The only thing I remembered about this movie when I picked it up recently was the fact I absolutely hated it when it came out. If memory serves me correct, I couldn't even finish it, and ended up turning it off. One of the few movies I've ever just shut off, because I am weird and, completist when it comes to my VHS collection. I wanted to get a copy of all of Jean-Claude Van Damme's releases that came out on VHS. I figured I might as well give it another shot if I've got it anyway. Again, this is another one of those, while it's not a great flick, it is nowhere near as bad as I remember it being. This was during that weird time period in the mid to late 90s, early 2000s, where a lot of films felt more like a music soundtrack showcase than a film. This is a prime example of one of those films. Don't get me wrong, a lot of them work rather well, but so many of them just felt forced and out of place. For Universal Soldier: The Return, it feels like it mostly works. There's some good moments action-wise, and it's, comprehensible enough story-wise that it doesn't bog it down too bad. I have certainly seen much worse Jean-Claude Van Damme films. This falls somewhere in the middle. If you're like me, I figure it's not the type of film you're going to be able to even recall after an extended break. It's forgettable, but serviceable. My rating is a 4.5 out of 10. The average IMDb rating is a 4.1 out of 10. So we're going to end the show this week with a couple of 2018 films. And up first is 2018's The Predator.
Do you know what my job description is? I'm in acquisitions. I look up and I catch what falls out of the sky.
What's on the ship?
Tell me about the mission. Did you see anything unusual?
It's above our pay grade. Do I get a cookie now?
Look, I get it. Something went down in Mexico. Nobody wants any witnesses. We need to know if you and your men pose a threat.
We're Rangers.
Hey, Baxley, if your mom's vagina were a video game, it'd be rated E for everyone.
Isn't posing a threat kind of the fucking point?
Predators just don't sit around making hats out of rib cages. They conquered space. But that's not what's on the horizon.
Should I be worried? Riley.
I think you know what is on the ship. The ultimate predators.
Light him up!
We may die.
We're still here. So come and get us, motherfucker.
This is an action-adventure horror directed by Shane Black, has a 107-minute runtime, rated R, stars Boyd Holbrook, Trevante Rhodes, and Jacob Tremblay. I watched this on Blu-ray. From the outer reaches of space to the small-town streets of suburbia, the hunt comes home. The universe's most lethal hunters are stronger, smarter, and deadlier than ever before, having genetically upgraded themselves with DNA from other species. When a boy accidentally triggers their return to Earth, only a ragtag crew of ex-soldiers and an evolutionary biologist can prevent the end of the human race. I've been anxious to check this out. I know some of the sequels got mixed reactions, but I enjoyed them. Also, although it did take me a few viewings to come around on both Part 2 and Predators. Hell, I even enjoy the Aliens vs. Predator films in their own B-movie schlocky sort of way. This, like the other sequels, has seemed to garner much of the same reaction, so I was curious how it would end up playing out. There's a lot of good points about this. I was never once bored, it moved along at a great pace, and there was very little downtime. Much like the original, we get a bit of a glimpse of each of the main squad and some of the sub-characters. While they didn't delve too deeply, there was enough there to let you know who they were and what they were about. In many ways, it does mirror the original film regarding those aspects. I was caught off guard at how graphic some of it was. Kudos to that. They didn't shy away from the violence, which was one of the things I thought they may end up doing. If you grew up loving 80s and 90s action films, you're more than likely familiar with Shane Black's writings and films. He wrote the original Predator. I can't remember if he directed that as well, but I mean, you know, Lethal Weapon, The Long Kiss Goodnight, Iron Man 3. I mean, he's done a lot of movies. There's a certain rhythm to the dialogue, the way he does dialogue and action, and this is no exception. For all the good things I enjoyed about this, something fell off to me about the whole film. I'm not sure what it was, but it almost feels like something was missing. I also didn't care for the way the film ended. It felt like they were trying too hard to take the franchise in a different direction with the way they left it hanging. Truthfully, it felt like it was added in last minute because some studio exec somewhere had an idea they kind of forced in there. There's also a weird character addition that I found to be just weird and off. While it's kind of cool, it also makes very little sense and feels unnecessary. It just didn't add anything to the story. In my opinion, don't get me wrong, there are a lot of things that don't make sense when it comes to the characters, but it's something I come to expect with a film like this. The only thing I will say is the evolutionary biologist is one of those characters that is just like, dude, there's no way she is like that badass because she whips ass as well, if not better than some of the soldiers. Just throwing that out there. Not because she's a woman, but because she is an evolutionary biologist and not a soldier. The technical side of things is solid. Aside from a couple very cheesy and obvious CGI moments towards the end, I didn't find any problems as far as that stuff went. This is one of those films I'm really going to have to give a few more views before I can come to a conclusion about how I feel about it. If it's anything like the other ones, I'm sure it will grow on me. With that said, I can see why it's divisive amongst fans of the series. It's certainly one of those films you need to watch and decide on for yourself. But I feel it's definitely worth a watch if you like the other films in the series. Form your own opinion. Because, you know, as I always say, opinions are like assholes. Everybody's got one, you know. So my rating, 6 out of 10. The average IMDb rating is a 5.5 out of 10. And we're going to end with a film that I really had no interest in seeing, to be honest with you. And, you know, it kind of, as word trickled in, and I've kind of got superhero movie burnout, I guess, to a point. And that is 2018's Venom.
I'm Eddie Brock. I'm a reporter. I always seem to find myself questioning something the government may not be looking at. I found something really bad. And I have been...
Eddie.
Who said that? Taken.
Look around at the world. What do you see? A planet on the brink of collapse. Human beings are disposable. But man and symbiote combined. This is a new race, a new species. A higher life form.
What do you want from me? You'll find out.
I'm so sorry. We cannot just hurt people.
Look into my eyes, Eddie. The way I see it. We can do whatever we want. Do we have a deal? Eyes, lungs, pancreas, so many snacks, so little time.
that power. It's not completely awful.
You have no idea how much you're scaring me right now.
Eddie, cooperate. And you just might survive.
Guys, you do not want to do this, trust me.
Giant leaps will always come at a cost.
We will eat both your arms and then both of your legs, and then we will eat your face right up your head. You will be this armless, legless, faceless thing, won't you? Rolling down the street like a turd in the wind.
What the hell are you?
We are Venom.
Oh, I have a parasite. Yeah. Name is Chen.
This is an action sci-fi directed by Ruben Fleischer, has a 112-minute runtime, rated PG-13, stars Tom Hardy, Michelle Williams, and Riz Ahmed. I watched this on Blu-ray. Journalist Eddie Brock is trying to take down Carlton Drake, the notorious and brilliant founder of the Life Foundation. While investigating one of Drake's experiments, Eddie's body merges with the alien Venom, leaving him with superhuman strength and power, twisted, dark, and fueled by rage. Venom tries to control the new and dangerous abilities Eddie finds so intoxicating. I'm vaguely familiar with Venom from my days of regular comic reading, but even then, the character wasn't one of those regulars on my radar. With the little knowledge I had of him, I was curious to see how they were going to pull this one off because the character is different. For the most part, I haven't heard a lot of people talking about this one other than it was way better than they expected. I was curious if my viewing experience would be the same. I'm happy to say what I've been hearing is on point. Venom ended up being a very enjoyable film. The acting and effects were great. The story has a weird ebb and flow to it, but it ends up working in terms of how everything progresses. There isn't any one thing I can point out and say that's why I enjoyed this. It just works in the overall scheme of what the film did. This feels familiar, yet very different in how it progresses. The world it's set in very much feels like a typical MCU film, but at the same time, there's a certain disparity to it that makes it feel like its own thing. I think a lot of that comes down to the character of Venom and how it works in the MCU. Tom Hardy does an amazing job of pulling it off and making it work. I'm not sure if it wasn't for his performance, if this would have been as effective as it was. I'm really glad this turned out to be enjoyable. As far as the MCU films go, I would put it somewhere in the middle of the pack. While it's not at the top, it certainly isn't at the bottom. It's a pretty fun and enjoyable ride, even if you're not familiar or very familiar with the character. And truthfully, if you're not as familiar with the character, it may be even more enjoyable. I'm kind of curious because, like I said, I haven't really heard a lot of the people that I know that are real familiar with the character talking about him. My rating is a 7.5 out of 10. The average IMDb rating is a 6.8 out of 10. And that's going to wrap up this review cast. I want to thank everybody who has listened to the show since I've started. This right now, technically, I'm going on year 3 of the show. And up to almost 100 episodes. When I started this, I wasn't even sure how many I was going to do or how often. The show has definitely evolved to a place where I'm very happy with how everything's going. And, being able to do both reviews and talk to people in the entertainment fields is awesome. I have some great guests coming up. Matter of fact, next week's guest, author Morgan Sylvia, will be in, and episode 100. And we're going to talk about all the cool things she's had going on. And I want to talk about her book Abode, which I absolutely loved. And just kind of see what she's up to. And I'm sure we'll have a lot to talk about. It's going to be a lot of fun. And so, thank you once again, everybody, for listening to the show. I'd like to thank my sponsors, the Maine Cannababes. You can go to the newly revamped MaineCannababes.com website, find out all kinds of information. Their new calendar is up and ready, available for purchase, and they're going fast. I think they were almost sold out the last I knew, and talking about doing a second printing. So you want to get on that if you want to make sure you get yourself a copy of it. All the proceeds from their calendar will go to a charitable cause, which they designate, and I believe that is up on the website right now, what they're doing this year. I think it's the Mid-Coast Lyme Foundation. But again, MaineCannababes.com, you can find out all kinds of information about that, and they do have an event coming up this Saturday, calendar release. You can come meet some of the Cannababes, find out all kinds of information, and see what they are all about. So, again, thank you everybody for listening to the show. I'm your host, TJ Washburn. And remember, kids, opinions are like assholes. Everybody's got one. And I will see you sexy animals on the flip side.
It's intermission. Rise and stretch time. Time to refresh yourself and visit our snack bar. Got a yen for hot popcorn? Your favorite soft drinks are sparkling cold. The juicy Frank sizzling hot. There's delicious coffee, freshly brewed, and all kinds of ice cream and candy to tempt you. Showtime will be announced loud and clear to get you back to your car in time. So stretch your legs. Come to the snack bar now.
Thanks for listening to Average Joe's Drive-In. If you'd like to talk movies or contact the show, add our social media pages. You can add us on Facebook at Average Joe's Drive-In Podcast, on Twitter at TWJ Author, on Instagram at Thomas Washburn Jr. You can also hit up www.thomaswashburnjr.com for more information about the show and related links. If you'd like to support the show, you can buy TJ's books on Amazon. Just type in Thomas Washburn Jr. in the search. Books are available in Kindle and paperback formats. If you have Kindle Unlimited or Prime, you can read the books for free and money will be earned by the pages read. It doesn't cost you anything and it supports the show. Until next time, you've been listening to Average Joe's Drive-In.